Hello, and welcome to another episode of Automate Office Work. My name is Justin Turman, and I am a techie lawyer who went on the journey to automate all of my office work, and I'm here to help you. Today's episode is a little bit more about me, getting to know the host. It's been a couple episodes, and I think it's time that I introduce myself and give you a little bit more detail about who I am, where I come from, and how I got on this journey of automating. So, my name is Justin. I am an American lawyer, and I now live in the Netherlands the last 10 years, but I've lived in several countries. I grew up in America. I grew up in the state of Montana, and I was born in the early 80s, so I am an elder millennial. I got to see the rise of the internet, the popularity of personal computers in the homes. And when I was about 12 years old is when my family got our first computer in the home. And I was very curious about it. I learned how to take it apart. I learned how to start coding on it. And in the early 90s, the World Wide Web came about. And when I was about, I think, 12 years old or 13, is when I bought a book. I saved up my birthday money and I went and bought this really big, thick book for like $55, which was a ton of money for a kid back then. But this book was all about HTML. And I read through it and just ingested it. And just started learning how to make web pages. So much so, in fact, that actually one of my first jobs, along with like walking dogs and mowing the neighbor's grass, one of my first jobs was actually to work for a local law firm. You can imagine, I'm 12 or 13 years old. And back then, the World Wide Web was such a new thing. Nobody knew how to write in HTML. But my parents were barbers, and they let their customers know, like, oh, you need somebody who does HTML? My son just taught himself. Yes, he's only 13, but he can do it for some extra money or some extra, I don't know, some extra hardware or whatever. And so, we had to deal with a local law firm. And I took their text files and converted them to HTML. So, kind of a funny thing, I grew up to become a techie lawyer, and this was one of the first jobs I had as a kid. Yeah, I can't imagine hiring a child, especially for a law firm, to do tech work nowadays. But it's a different world back then, especially when nobody even knew the language, right? HTML was brand new. And so you took your tech workers where you could, right? So yeah, I was very interested from a young age in computer languages, and also human languages. I say on my LinkedIn profile that I am a lawyer, I'm a coder, and I am a linguist. I was fascinated from a young age with math and languages, also with music. You see it in the back, you might notice I have a trombone in the back. It's one of the instruments that I play. I grew up playing many, many musical instruments. Started out with the piano, then went to band and choir. I did symphony. I did jazz band, so all kinds of music. So for me, these different things like music, math, languages, and computer languages, they're kind of all connected. They're all just languages, ways of expressing yourself. And so that's the kind of person I grew up being. When I was 19, I left to live in Russia for 2 years. I was a missionary slash humanitarian aid worker. I became fluent in Russian. And I loved my experience of living outside the United States, so much so that I wanted to be able to do that the rest of my life. So I studied in undergrad. I primarily, my majors were Russian and linguistics. In my linguistic studies, I studied Mandarin Chinese, French, and Spanish. in addition to majoring in Russian. So that's quite a few languages. Um, Also, as part of my linguistic studies, I took several classes that were like speech recognition, and one of them was web development. And so I took enough classes, I was able to minor in computers. Um, yeah, I took one class in web development. It was 3 months of HTML, CSS, which is styling for web pages, and JavaScript. And yeah, those 3 months, I already knew everything that they were teaching me. But on the very last day, they introduced us to database programming. So you could have database driven web pages. And that opened my eyes. We had one day introduction to PHP and MySQL. And so with just that one day of introduction, it got me hooked in very powerful database driven websites. Uh, okay, so my career goal in studying all these languages and computers was actually to work for the US government intelligence. Because I had already lived for 2 years in Russia. I lived around Moscow. I lived in Moscow for 3 months, and I lived in Minsk for 6 months. So because of my experience living in those cities and because of my activities as a missionary, humanitarian aid, I was used to persuading people, uh, creating relationships with them, and then persuading them to change their lifestyles, their behaviors. And also because I was a missionary, I was there with very good morals. The intelligence agencies loved this kind of profile. And so I interviewed with them for over a year. Um, and I guess, like I hinted at earlier, I really wanted to live outside the United States. I wanted to be able to live abroad in different countries with different cultures. I really enjoy it, and I'd like to do it the rest of my life. So I interviewed with them. I got very close to being hired. They don't tell you why they don't hire you, but in the end, I got a very thin envelope that said, sorry, we will not be taking this further. I believe it was because of the background check, and well, I have a Russian wife, so that includes doing a background check not only on me and all of my family, but her and all of her family, which can get quite expensive for the intelligence agencies to go around the world and interviewing every single person who could be a liability to me. So in the end, I got the no. And from there, I started looking at my other options, thinking, what are the other kinds of careers where an American can live around the world? And one of the careers that came onto my radar very quickly was American lawyers, because a lot of people want to do business with the United States. And in order to do that, you need to have a contract between the two parties. You need to have a contract with the local person or company and with an American person or a company. And so you need to have a contract between these two people. And the contract is going to have to be based on somebody's law. You usually don't want the law to be based on Russian law, which is basically whoever knows the judge, right? So you usually want this contract to be based on American law. But you also want, so you're going to want a lawyer to be writing this contract, an American lawyer, but you're also going to want this American to be in the local culture so that they know all the different things that you need. They have the relationships, they know how things get done, kind of stuff, right? So, okay, so there are American lawyers all around the world sitting in every major city that are helping facilitate, commercial relationships with contracts. Okay, so that was my goal, and I went to law school in Washington, D.C. I loved my experience there. I was there for 3 years, and a couple of couple of my experiences. As a student, you go around and you try to get internships, try to get them paid if possible, and especially during the summers when there is no class, that's especially when you want to be going and getting legal experience as a student. So during my summers, I went back to Moscow and I worked at a law firm that is an American law firm, but I worked in their Moscow offices for those 2 summers. What a great experience, right? I went back and I was able to, I was living as a normal person, not a missionary. So yeah, I was able to go back and it felt like I was right back at home. I was already fluent in the language. Of course, working in a law firm, the language was a little bit different than just your normal conversational street language. I really had to increase and improve my Russian ability to be able to work with law and with contracts, but I did it and had a great experience there. Also in the United States, because I was in Washington, D.C. during the school years, I would also go get internships with the U.S. government, the different institutions. And one of the best ones that I was able to work for was the Securities and Exchange Commission. I worked in the enforcement division. I worked in well, first I worked in their international office, where I was reviewing the forms and filings of international companies that wanted to be listed on the U.S. Stock Exchange. I also worked in investigations for anti-bribery. Whenever there were allegations against a U.S. company taking bribes abroad, we had to investigate them, and that involved often reviewing thousands and thousands of pages of emails and contracts. And these emails and contracts that I was in charge of reviewing were all in Russian. Okay, so that was my experience with my law school. I guess often as a student also, I would be given assignments that were maybe not so much legal, but it was much more kind of a secretarial. It was kind of like review this data and go over it and just process a ton of data. And when they gave me these kinds of assignments, what I would do, instead of taking the 2 weeks that they recommended that I take and manually review and process all this data, instead I would think like, okay, I learned programming. I have these website skills as well. So if there's some kind of a website component, I can take in that data, I can process it. So I would create like these little, I would take like 20 minutes and create a little program that would ingest all the data, do the processing for me, and then I would run it, and maybe it would run for like 10 minutes. So altogether, it took me 30 minutes to do the task that they assigned to me. And then I would go back to them after these 30 minutes and say, here you go, I just processed all this data for you. Now can you give me some legal work, right? So yeah, I noticed very quickly that a lot of work that is done doesn't actually have to be done. It's kind of busy work that if only people knew how to use computers, we would be so much more productive and efficient. So yeah, every time I've ever had a job, yeah, a lot of times they have like these ancient, outdated systems. It's like going back to DOS. And you're working with these people that are much older and they just think all the work has to be done manually. If you have the skills, you can see through this and you can get the work done so much faster, okay? So yeah, after law school, I immediately moved to Brussels with my wife and my children. We lived there speaking French, and I had my own kind of consulting company where I was connecting legal departments with law firms. I did this for a couple of years, and then I got hired by a major U.S. corporation. that worked in medical devices, and they moved me to Amsterdam, where I have been now for more than 10 years speaking Dutch. It was the same story there again. I would do my legal work. I would notice a lot of the work was being done manually when it doesn't have to be. I finally did a Google search, how to automate Microsoft Office. One of the first things that I automated, this was back even before the tools of Power Automate, back when one of the biggest tools we had was just Excel itself with macros. So I started learning macros. I had a task that had a workflow of like about 20 steps. And I just made a goal for myself that I was going to learn how to create these macros that control everything on your computer, by the way. This is one of the biggest reasons why you should only run macros from people that you trust. And that's because they can do everything on your computer. They move your mouse, they can click your keyboard. The computer can't even tell that it's not a person, or at least back then it couldn't. It was like magic to me. So little by little, I started learning from step 1 to 20. I started learning just how do I do the very first step? You know, how do I click a button and make Internet Explorer open? Which it had to be Internet Explorer for this ancient system that I was working with. Yeah. And then how to put in my username and password, how to move the mouse and have it click on something and have it download a PDF and then extract the text from the PDF and then do some comparison, make sure everything is complete, and then go download a Word document from some other, like a SharePoint, and then how to take all these data points that were on the web page and scrape from the PDF, and how to paste those all in to the Word document and then convert that to PDF, attach it to an email, write out my email, all of this stuff. So little by little, I saw it as an investment, really. Like, you know, I already didn't have very much time because my workload was going up exponentially, but every day I would take like a couple of minutes and just learn the very next step. Within 2 months, I had this workflow of 20 steps, all automated. I showed it to my manager and my manager's manager. They were thrilled. They saw it as being magic. Yeah, I was highly encouraged. You know, I asked like, well, what happens now that I'm not just being a normal lawyer, right? And my boss said something very nice. He said, Justin, there are millions of lawyers that can do legal work, but there's only one Justin. There's only one of you who can take all of our legal work and just automate it using the computer. And so he encouraged me. We changed my title. We changed my role in the legal department of this corporation. And I became then like a consultant to the rest of the legal department. And I would just meet with people one-on-one, hear about their struggles, and just offer them tools and solutions. So I did this for about 10 years. I got very, very proficient in the Microsoft environment. I did switch from Excel as soon as I saw these tools in the cloud called the Power Suite. It's Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI. These things, instead of running on your local laptop, they run in the cloud. So they're much more powerful. They're able to connect to everything. And you don't need a laptop dedicated just to sit there to have a macro move your mouse around. It just acts in the cloud for you. So I did that totally for 10 years. And then this last May, I finally made the choice. And I started my own consulting company. I was actually encouraged by many people along the way. You know, I did this for years, acting as a consultant inside my company. And I would have people very often encourage me. They said, Justin, this is amazing. You need to go create your own company. You need to offer this to the whole world. This can't just be for our company. And so I did that. And I've had a great experience as a consultant in this space. I do focus on legal departments just because the law is what I know. I know what in-house lawyers are struggling with. Going back to when I was 12, right? But but yeah, a lot of what the in-house lawyers are struggling with, it's not necessarily legal issues. It's not. It's the office work, guys. We are in 2024, and we are many people are working at computers. They don't know how to use them. I'm sorry. And now they're expecting AI to be a magic wand that will just magically know what we need, even though we don't know what we need ourselves. Okay, so a person like myself who knows both the work that needs to be done and how the computer can organize and structure that work to get it done. A person like me is very valuable, a person who speaks both languages. Okay, so I guess anybody looking to get into this kind of space, my recommendations, first of all, learn computers. You need to learn how computers actually work. If you don't know a coding language, I would highly recommend that you go learn at least one. I now do about 10 computer languages, and I would say you don't even need to learn that many. You just need to learn the concepts of how computer languages work and how computers work. And you start noticing the patterns that computers are only doing like 7 or 10 basic things. It's just in every language, they call them by different names, and there's different syntax of how to get it done. But the basic things of what a computer is doing, it's basically always the same. And so if you can then see how to structure work in that way, which by the way, you should also learn some kind of a niche industry or learn how the work is actually being done so you know how people are manually doing the work. Okay, so learn 2 languages, learn tech, and then learn a specialized industry. Okay, so if you're in my shoes, if you've already studied computers and you want to switch from being a lawyer to doing something technology, I recommend that you stay in legal for at least a couple of years so you can become very familiar with the work that's being done and the struggles. Um, yeah, and then combine them. There is so much work to do in this space. I don't see AI as solving everything. We need to get our own house in order first. There are all kinds of memes. If you just take chaos and you add AI to it, you get even more chaos, right? We need to get our own house in order first. We need to get ready for the AI. The AI is not going to magically replace us. It's going to amplify us. So we need to have our own house in order so that amplification can be done in the right way. Okay. All right. Is there anything else I'm missing on my screen here? I've had another tab here. This is a biography platform that I created. It's or bios, just so that a department can people in the department can share information about themselves. All right. You can see here my top 5 strengths. My top 5 strengths are input, learner, intellection, ideation, and connectedness. I am very much in my head. I am not so much about achieving and going forth. I'm much more thoughtful. I'm always thinking things. I'm like a sponge also. Like you saw that I love music and all these languages and computer languages. My mind is a sponge. I'm constantly just soaking up everything. I actually also studied how to memorize, so I memorize everything very quickly. I love learning. Intellection, I love thinking about things, but on a deeper level as well. Not just how to do something, but why. Why are we doing it? Question everything. And then ideation, I love coming up with ideas. How can we do this in the future? How can we build the future that we want? And then number 5, connectedness. Taking all of these different random parts of knowledge and connecting them, like connecting computers with legal. How do we connect everything? Okay, yeah. I've got some photos. If you're viewing this, I've got just a short slideshow of photos. I live just outside Amsterdam. I lived in Moscow, and I grew up in Montana. All right. I function in several languages. I can function in Russian, Dutch, Spanish, and French. And in addition, I finished several languages on Duolingo. I finished German, Portuguese, Italian, Czech, Polish, Ukrainian, Norwegian, Danish, and Swedish. It really helps if you study how to study languages, if you study linguistics. It also helps, the more languages you know, the more you have to connect. Because the best way to learn is not to learn something in isolation, but it's to connect to what you already have learned before. So the more languages you know, the more easier it becomes to learn even more languages. And I do the following computer languages and platforms. I do PHP, I do HTML, JavaScript, CSS, jQuery, MySQL, Microsoft Power Automate, and SharePoint. Yeah, so that's a little bit more about me. I created this podcast, especially because when I was just beginning, I looked around for podcasts. I looked around for tutorials, and I never was able to find anything that was suitable. I would find things that were like at just two extremes. There was one side of the extreme. It was just, here are tips and tricks for Excel or Outlook. And on the other extreme, there was, here is a full course in Python. I needed something that was just somewhere in the middle. Like, how do I go forward and connect and just automate inside the Microsoft environment? I've also had many people reach out to me since, and they've asked me, can you help me to become like you? And I never had a resource that I was able to just provide, to recommend to anybody. So I would recommend my own website now, automateofficework.com. I've got several resources. I have this podcast. Underneath that, I have free resources. One of them is automateofficework.com/learn. This was actually the very beginnings of my website. I started in 2020, just as a place to put lessons to teach people. The very first section is lessons that teach the computer concepts that you need to know. The next section is scenarios, where we go through common struggles at work and we break them down. We map them out using the concepts from the previous section in the lessons. And then in the final section here, solutions, we take one of these mappings and we show you how to actually build it usually inside of Power Automate and SharePoint. Okay. The beautiful thing is, if you are already a person who is an expert in your field, you know your area, your industry, you can come and learn the computer lessons, the concepts of how computers work. We can teach you how to map out the patterns of this work using computer concepts. And that's basically all you need if you want to be some kind of a tech consultant in your industry. Because you can meet with people, you know their work, and you can then describe it in computer terms. That's enough. You can now take this to your IT department or to some vendor or an outside consultant, and they will help you go forward. You actually don't need to know how to build yourself. That's already adding a lot of value. If you would like to go the extra step and actually learn how to build, I do have some examples here on the solutions as well. It's incredibly it's incredibly rewarding to be working in this space. It's very creative. It's very value adding to be able to help people and have an impact, not only on the way they work, but just their overall well-being. We're all overwhelmed with manual work that doesn't need to be manual anymore. We have the technology, we have the tools. Um, all right. And if you need help, I am always here as well. At automateofficework.com, there's a button to book a call with me, and I do offer services in consulting. I can just chat with you and let you know where you need to go. I can offer custom solutions, anything inside the Microsoft environment. I do branch out outside of Microsoft as well, but I do focus on the Microsoft environment. As well as I am available to meet with you and your team and just do some education, because no matter how good the technology is, these tools need to be built for people. We need to bring the people along with us. So there is some culture, some education that needs to be done, so that people don't just expect a magic wand, but they come along with us for the journey, and they really have the right expectations and know what's going to be involved here. All right, so I think that's enough. I think you've learned quite a bit about me. I wish you all happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. I do try to do these broadcasts every Friday live on LinkedIn at 4 p.m. Amsterdam time, which is 10 a.m. New York time usually. And during the holiday season, though, I am going to take a break. So I'll see you guys back here in the new year. And with that, I wish you happy automating.